What's up everyone, welcome back to Tabletop Forge. Somehow it's 2025 and this video should have been out months ago, but hey, I'm here now and I'm ready to roll. Let's get to work. I make terrain for my D&D group and I try to document the process and share it. I appreciate feedback in the comments and I hope to inspire viewers like you to craft some awesome stuff for your tabletop games. Today we're making a wrecked pirate ship Tavern, that is, a pirate ship that wrecked on the beach and later became a tavern. Here I'm carving some grout lines into these square pieces of foam and then alternating the pattern to make it look like individual bricks. Speaking of individual bricks, I use these a lot in my builds. You can make some pretty crap terrain, throw some individually placed bricks on it, and it immediately looks like fine art. Okay, the main attraction to this build is this 3D printed pirate ship from Loot Studios. 3D printing can make your life easier, but they still require plenty of work on their own. There's lots of time spent cleaning off mold lines or other printing artifacts, trying to get it ready for assembling and painting. I should have used super glue here instead of this white glue, I'm not sure what I was thinking. I mixed in some hot glue to give me a faster grab, but also some working time. I ended up coating all these seams with some super glue anyways, just to make sure it held together in the long run. Here is the assembled ship in all its glory. The back comes off to reveal the captain's quarters, and the whole upper deck comes off to reveal the lower decks. Our next D&D campaign will probably be a pirate campaign, so it's likely that I'll end up reprinting and painting this again in the future. But for this build, I'm going to be cutting this thing up in an attempt to age and weather it. Our D&D campaign takes place in the fictional city of Camorra, sort of a medieval Venice, and I'm building a location called Boonraggles, a pirate ship that was beached and later turned into a tavern. It's actually considered the oldest standing building in Camorra, so I need to make it look like an old weathered pirate ship. Here I'm trying to plan the layout on the board, and I think it's a little too long right now, so this piece in the front needs to go. I love these clippers. I'm not sure exactly what they're called or exactly what they're for, but I can basically cut anything if I can get a bite on it. Watch as I get bites on the ship. I'm liking this layout so far, so I'm going to go ahead and trace out where it's lying right now, and then it's back to weathering the ship. There is much more damage to be done, so let's grab some safety glasses, my rotary tool, and some sandpaper. The Dremel creates a little bit of a lip or a ridge in the plastic, so I'm going to use the sandpaper to clean that up a bit. Before I get too carried away with the damaging and the weathering of the ship, I need to carve into this foam and make sure everything fits just the way I want it. Then I continued with the Dremel work all over the ship, including the upper decks and the captain's cabin. There are lots of other little bits to chop up. We have some windows, some grates, and even the pirate ship's steering wheel. Sometimes the controlled destruction gets a little out of hand. But hey, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. The second time around, I'm a little more careful. Aging the 3D print like this is actually really fun. It's pretty easy to do, and it really helps to make it more unique and start to come alive. Another common task for post-processing 3D prints is filling the gaps that are created when you glue them together. I like to just use spackling or filler to do this, and a sculpting tool to help work it all into the cracks. A wet brush also helps to get rid of the excess spackling and helps to blend it all together. This tavern is going to need an entrance, so I'm using my rotary tool and a little handsaw to cut out this opening. There are a variety of foam additions I'm going to add to this piece, starting with some stairs. I use a wire brush to get the wood grain texture on these pieces, and sometimes I draw it in by hand. Here's a dude trying to get in before it's even open. There are 3D printed covers for these ports, but I wanted to leave some off and board them up with foam instead. There's a little more work to do on this wall, but it's pretty straightforward though. My idea for this wall was something to separate the urban streets of Camorra and the sandy beach where the ship was wrecked. Oh, and of course there has to be a shot of tinfoil pressed into foam to create some stone texture. A little coat of black paint and Mod Podge, and it's time to get back to the ship. The entire ship needs to be painted before it can be put into place, so I'm going to airbrush everything with some burnt umber ink to start. I think it's already looking great, but it's a little too monotone. We need to add some accent colors, starting with a darker brown that's going to cover all of the railings. All of the metal bits are going to get a coat of black, and later I'll add some metallic and rust. To start adding some color, I'm going to cover these windows with a barn red, and this decorative filigree stuff will get some yellow. I'm liking the overall colors, but we need to add some wash and some dry brushing to start to age it. This khaki dry brush is how I finish most of my builds, and it does a great job here to highlight the damage and add some weather and age. Here I'm wrapping up the paint details by adding some metallic paint to the metal bits, and then it's time to glue this ship into place. I had several pieces of mast that I didn't use, so I chopped them up and I used them as supports for this ship in the sand. I really like how this part turned out. Then it's time to blend it all in with the ground using some Sculptamold mixed with white glue and some paint. I wanted to create a shaded area outside, so I attached some tissue to a wooden beam made from foam. This is a sort of prototype. I ended up reworking it a bit later. Before I finish that area though, I need to lay some stones as a pathway from the city streets through the sand. Here I'm blending the stones in and filling the gaps with some more Sculptamold. I may have used too much paint or something as some of the stone detail was obscured, so I ended up going back in with a wet brush and trying to clean them up a little bit. I want to use some foam to add a few additional playable areas, starting with another entrance to the ship on the opposite side. My previous arena build was awesome, but it was pretty straightforward. I assembled and painted a 3D print. In this build, I was really able to exercise some creativity by heavily modifying this 3D print with damage and adding some foam structures. Both types of builds have their places on the table, of course, and ultimately I make whatever we need for our D&D sessions. I wanted to add some platforms to what was left of the damaged masts to try and add some playable elevation to this build. After all, the rogue has to have somewhere to stand and sneak attack everyone on the board, right? Here I have some more tissue glued to a wooden foam beam, and I'm dipping it into some watered down Mod Podge. Once the beam is glued in place, I stretch the tissue, tack it into place, trim it a bit, and then when it dries it should look like canvas. I built a custom frame for the outside and repeated the tissue dipping process. This process can be a little delicate, but once it dries you get a great effect. I didn't glue the frame in place, so it could be removable and you can put minis and stuff underneath it. One of the last main steps is to add some ground cover. Here I'm mixing some sand, tile grout, and pigment powder to create some beach sand. To get it on the board, all you have to do is brush on some watered down glue and sprinkle the sand on top. I use a dry brush to brush away any excess sand that got on the ship or the supports. It leaves behind a bit of the pigment powder, which adds some sand color to the ship as well. Once it's all covered, it just needs to be sealed in. First I spray some watered down isopropyl alcohol, and then drizzle on some watered down glue all over the entire piece. Once this dries, it should be locked in. If there are any spots that need additional coverage, like around these flagstones, I just add some more watered down glue and sprinkle the sand onto it. There are a few patches around the board that look a little too thin, so I do the same there as well. Now we're on to some final details. I spray painted some jewelry chain black, then hit it with some yellow, orange, and brown paint to simulate rust. Rusty chains can make any old terrain look awesome. I got these posters from another YouTuber called Devs and Dice, and they add some great character to the piece. And for this final step, I wanted to add a patch to the sail, so I took some more tissue, stained it a different color, and glued it right on. That's about it, folks. Let's see how it all turned out. That is a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. I have more builds coming up soon, so like and subscribe and all that. Leave me some feedback in the comments, let me know what I could have done better or what else you would like to see. And don't forget you can listen to full episodes of our D&D sessions on Spotify. Link is in the description. Catch you next time on Tabletop Forge.